The countdown is my cue to chug coffee.
And I just came off a Fortnite stream as we discussed, so
Yeah.
it's fine. How are you doing,
Welcome
Ian?
to. How am I doing?
Yeah. What are we doing? Yeah, sorry. What are we
What are we
doing?
doing? We are doing the developers stream. I feel like I've
Yep.
had to start counting. Maybe I'm getting older because now I do have to count. In the beginning, it just rolled off the tongue, but now it's, yeah. Otherwise known
So,
as developer Devx5.
yep.
My name's Ian Jennings. This is Chris Chinchilla.
Hello.
I've forgotten your last name,
Oh,
your
that's
real last
fine.
name.
I don't want to use my real name because it's just so boring. You won't find me. My made up name is far more findable, which is why I use it.
How
And
many of
yeah,
these have we done now?
I should actually have a look. I can't quite remember. I
I
would
think we've done at
say we're
least
probably
10.
probably in the early teens at the latest. Yeah, the
Yeah.
tweens maybe. But we're gonna do something a little different for the next couple. So every episode we take a look into the developer experience, kind of getting our hands on from a reasonably vanilla starting point on a developer focused tool. But I was actually doing an interview for KubeCon with one of the product managers of HashiCorp. And we were talking a little bit about developer experience and their kind of suite of tools and how that company has been around for a while. And it kind of clicked with me that a company like that, we could actually spend a little bit of time on, I don't know how many episodes exactly, going through some of the various tools they have. Um, I was interested to do this because actually, in terms of a tech company, they're reasonably mature. They've been going for some time, but also their original founder, whose name I always forget, something Tashimoto.
Yep.
His name
Mitchell Hashimoto.
Mitchell. I was about to say Max, but Mitchell Hashimoto had these principles, I think, of developer experience back in the past. And it'd be interesting to see, as we did with Stripe on the very first episode, these companies that are infamous for developer experience, like how do they hold up now with the pressures of business and having to make revenue and pay back investors and stuff like that? When the ideals can sometimes go out the window, how do they stand up now? And also, with this kind of suite of tools, is there any consistency between them? Do they follow similar patterns and things like that, or are they all a bit different from each other? That kind of thing. I thought it'd be interesting to look into. What's your sort of God, I can't talk today. What is your familiarity with HashiCorp, Ian, or any of their products?
For me, it's, I've worked at a lot smaller companies, and I think their tools are focused on a lot larger engineering problems. And so my experience just is with Vagrant and
Yep.
running Vagrant up as a web developer. That's really as far as it goes.
To be honest with you, that was where I was thinking we would start anyway with Vagrant. So it seems appropriate.
Sure. And
But
so
that's kind of the
Vagrant
same for me. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
released in 2010. I mean, I would be 20 when that came out.
Wow, is it
Yeah.
11 years old? Wow.
Yeah.
I remember because when it came out, and this is pre-Docker, it was groundbreaking.
Yep.
For us, people like us who come from a web developer background, and we were wanting to get reusable stacks. It was basically the only option at the time, wasn't it? Unless you went down like the WAMP, ZAMP, whatever it was, path. It was pretty much when that came along, everyone was blown away. And then a few short years later came Docker and was like, oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Vagrant, see ya. But yeah,
I'm
it was a
curious
really
about
cool.
the developer experience, like morals or like kind of manifesto that you mentioned.
Where is it still there anywhere? Can you find it
Were they
still?
on the HashiCorp website?
I feel like it was at some point. I feel like you mentioned it. We could look it up. Hang on.
I mean, developer experience wasn't a word when this
No,
stuff
it
came out. So
was called something else, wasn't it? But I can't remember what he called it. Oops. I'm obviously mistyping because I am getting um, things about thyroiditis. This is the problem of using DuckDuckGo instead of Google, I guess. Um, I'm seeing other posts here, but I'm not sure. Maybe we can look for that in between time. Oh, here we go. Developer? No, that's from someone else. Ah, No, that's talking about their new project. Our launch post. Maybe this is it. Let's see. Announcing. Oh no, that's the launch of that particular tool. No, I can't find it. Maybe we'll find it in the meantime and even revisit it at the end. But this was actually one of the other interesting things that came into my mind, because I was just reminded whilst looking through those blog posts around why I wanted to do this as well. Because Vagrant, as we said, was probably the first project that came out of the company, and I will also say that they're blurring the lines very. What you said about the small company versus a large company was interesting, because I seem to remember using a lot of the tools, even something like Terraform, in small company world, but their enterprise products are very much moving them more into the enterprise. But there's still a lot of crossover between them, and they now have a mixture of open source and non-open source. But I was talking to the product manager of Waypoint, which is one of their newer tools, and when I was looking through it, a lot of the syntax reminded me a lot of Vagrant, which is why I thought, I wonder if this follows through a lot of the projects or not. But yeah. Should we open Vagrant probably for the first time in some time for the two of us?
Yeah, I'm wondering how it holds up as well. Like, this is also
look.
probably one of the oldest tools that we've talked about on this.
Yeah,
stream,
which is interesting in itself.
I'm curious if it's been updated, or like if there's something we can learn from it.
We can probably go for a bit of dual screen share again if you want. If you want to throw in yours as well.
Sure.
Does that seem to work okay? Let's wait. Hide that down there. Dum dum dum. And I suddenly realized the colors of my screen are basically matching the colors of my lights right now. Not intentional.
Suddenly, yeah.
Okay. Just wait for you there. I think I still have Vagrant installed, so because I do use it very occasionally for testing some Linux stuff, and then I kind of switched to something else. But okay, how you going there? You got a screen for me?
Yep. Here we go.
Oh, there we go. All right, now let's mess around with this. What was the best way? I think. No, maybe. I think of the best way. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it'll do. Just need to move it so it's relevant. There we go. It's a shame we can't have two screens split and the small faces at the bottom. I'll take the name out, and that should give a bit more space as well. So there we go. All right, cool. So let's start with Vagrant. You're using Windows today? Yeah.
I'm using Windows again. Yep.
I'm interested to see, because I know I can just install it with Homebrew. I'm interested to see how you do it with Windows.
Yeah, it's interesting because even just the getting started guide doesn't. It's just like it just assumes, oh, hey, you're running a Linux distro. Like it doesn't. There's no split here for platform.
For Vagrant, that's interesting. Install. Because most of the time you're not using a Linux. That's kind of the point.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, here's a terminal, and it's like when you're done, you'll have a VirtualBox running Ubuntu. So it's like, well,
binary package.
If I'm on Ubuntu,
downloads. Yeah, package manager.
But also, I mean, Vagrant's used to isolate those resources anyway and model the server environment more closely, right?
So for macOS, I definitely see a homebrew option. For Windows, I can see you have to download a binary, which is a bit of a pain.
I see.
I think more people should embrace chocolatey on Windows. To be honest with you, like, it's not that bad. Its approval process for things is a bit weird, but it works. Like it solves the problem, I think. Yeah. So mine will be a lot quicker.
I'm trying to install Vault. I want Vagrant. Getting started.
I think I have it installed already, actually. So.
Yeah, Chocolatey may have.
Oh no, I don't. It could do. But then again, it'd be nice to show it. Actually, I didn't have it installed. So there we go. I'm reinstalling Vagrant. That's good.
Okay, let's see. Yeah, Chocolatey has Vagrant. So let's fire up.
Yes. And I do recall, I think there's sometimes a dependency, like it might use VirtualBox or something else. I'm not, let's see how that happens. But I think that was in a time when maybe pre-inbuilt virtualization on a lot of operating systems. Let's see. I'm not sure how what's going to happen here, because it used to always need VirtualBox. But let's see. Let's see if it mentions anything there.
I'm curious if people are still using Vagrant.
Yeah, prerequisites VirtualBox. So you do need VirtualBox. Yeah.
What do I get with Vagrant that I don't get with Docker?
It's very different. I mean, that's not necessarily
Yeah.
I think the merits of Vagrant versus Docker are not necessarily the topic of the discussion here, because I think that conversation's been had many, many times. I feel like it's just the first tool they started with, so it's the first tool we start with. I don't anticipate actually needing it anytime soon. I have the places where I have wanted it was where I've wanted a actual Linux machine to play around with, as opposed to containers. But then I ended up switching to Canonical has a tool called I've completely forgot what it's called. Another tool that I used that I found leaner than Vagrant, but that's often. And sometimes if, like a lot of the time, there's an assumption you want to play around with Ubuntu or Debian, and sometimes I wanted to play around with Arch or something like that. So I found it quite good for that. And also for the other reason I found it very useful was when I wanted to create multi-node clusters, but to simulate like an actual 3 machines kind of thing. That kind of. So there's a couple of weird edge cases where you sometimes find Vagrant is better suited than Docker, but yeah, they are increasingly rare. But do I actually have VirtualBox? I don't have VirtualBox. So that's actually interesting as well, because in Homebrew you can specify dependencies, and that isn't the case. So I have to also install that.
All right, I've got Vagrant installed. Close and reopen the shell.
So I now see what they've done with the prerequisites here. It's broken out, and I'm seeing something that's going to potentially cause me problems, actually. Because VirtualBox requires a kernel extension, and that means I have to restart my Mac. So that's not going to work. But you can actually use, I have Parallels installed on my Mac, which you can also use. It just requires some extra flags. So either you may have to carry on, or I will just have to override. But I don't think we're going to spend too long on Vagrant anyway. So let's...
I've got it installed via Chocolatey.
Do you have VirtualBox as well? Because you will, or I don't know, maybe Windows can use something else. I'm not sure. Do you have VirtualBox?
I don't think so. Let's see. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Okay, let's just see how far we get here. Vagrant init HashiCorp Bion 64. Okay, install and specify a box. Boot environment. All right, let's try Vagrant up. Whoop, that was not the right command. You will not actually see anything, though, since Vagrant runs in a virtual machine without a UI. To prove that it is running, you can SSH into the machine.
Can you increase the font on your terminal at all? Is that
Yes.
an easy thing to do? Visa, that's better.
Have you turned off, or are you stuck here because you need to reboot?
No, I'm waiting to install VirtualBox as well. It's quite a big, quite a big dependency. But I can do it with Parallels. I just have to remember how to, actually. It's been a little while since I did it. And if you do use Parallels, you have to use specified boxes and things. Not everyone works with it, but it does. I have done it before. I just can't entirely remember how to do it. Let's see. Oh no, I don't think I need to restart. That's good. Oh, VirtualBox is now part of Oracle. I didn't realize that. God damn it.
Interesting. as it goes.
Oh no, they do want to restart. Ugh. Very rarely do Macs need to restart, but there's a couple of annoying cases where they do, and this is one of them. Ah, damn it. I think there is actually a way to do it. I think you can reload a kernel extension or something like that, but I can't for the life of me remember how to do that. That's not something I need to do very often. It looks like you're getting somewhere, I think. Yeah, VirtualBox. You must have it installed already from some other time, I guess.
Yeah, I may. It doesn't seem like I don't know where you were instructed to install VirtualBox. I haven't come across that yet.
It was a prerequisite under the quick start.
Oh, well, I skip all through that.
It seems to be a pattern, isn't it?
Yeah, let me see if I can. Do I have VirtualBox?
I mean, can you not find it on the start menu or something like that? I don't know.
Yeah, I've got it somehow. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't know when. I might have done some experimentation with VMs and
yeah.
Who knows? I was running. Windows now has like a whole VM manager built into
Exactly.
Like,
You've actually got a better world.
So I don't know what I was doing installing that, but Chocolatey may have also installed it. I don't know if it has.
See, Homebrew could do that too, but I know there's some Homebrew has some issues with including closed source tools, but I thought VirtualBox was still open. I mean, if it's been taken over by Oracle, it's hard to know, but I thought it was still open source. Not this is turning into a VirtualBox, but this is half the thing though, Ian. It's like all this world, and this is a world that we don't have to worry about anymore. We're stepping back in the past a little bit here.
It's true, yeah. Well, I mean, do we have to worry about it? Like Docker is still pretty.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. But it's less complicated than it used to be.
That's true.
Yeah. I know VirtualBox is still open source, I think. Yeah. Okay, I think I'm getting it to work following the quick start. Something seems to be happening, despite the fact I didn't restart my computer. Something is happening. Well, let's see. It can be a little slow as well. This is the whole other difference between tools like Vagrant and Docker. Each time you want a new machine, it's a lot bigger.
So I am in my machine now. I've SSH'd.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, I think I'm about to get there. Oh no. Yeah, no, it's not working for me. I need to restart. So, oh well. Well,
I'll entertain the audience.
Oh no, I can't really restart.
Oh.
Let me. I know there's a shortcut way to do this, or it doesn't really matter too much because we're not going to spend a massive amount of time on VirtualBox, but sorry, on Vagrant. But let me see. I know there is a way to do this. Let me just check. You basically need to. Oh God, I don't know.
It's interesting. They have a tutorial here. Only be like the sixth step is to provision an Apache script and run a web server as part of the getting started guide, which is
I mean, that's what people used to use it for. Yeah, give it a go.
Yeah,
as part of the getting started guide.
Yeah, provision a virtual machine, and then
further down. Okay, yeah.
The step is to like it's just showing you how to configure Vagrant to use a bootstrap shell script.
Yeah. Yeah.
and then run it, serve it, and access it like over the web. It's a pretty good hello world if you think about it.
Yeah, and then
Because
that's literally what it is. You know, you're basically getting an entire virtual machine on your computer, and you treat it like one. Basically, you know, you SSH into it. The main difference is you get to share file system and network. You know, yeah,
yeah, which
and
is
yeah.
also like,
Sorry.
Docker has a lot of issues, or like it's very complicated to share the network, right? To
Yep.
between the services, and it's not exactly like, it's not exactly a Linux box. I'm starting to be a lot more simple with things, where like if I can just make a Linux box that has a shell script, like that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
uh but I'm a lot more of a like hacker mentality than engineering
Yep.
manager.
But the interesting thing I'm finding with this, because the title we made of the episode and kind of the mission of the company is to automate infrastructure. And if you think about it, that's basically what Vagrant is doing on a level that now seems a little rudimentary, but at the time was quite useful, you know, in that you could make a virtual machine in whatever you wanted to, and you could then just connect to it through some means or something like that. But what Vagrant did was put all that into a config file that did it for you. You know, it's basically what it did, and it seems rudimentary now, but that's pretty much ticking the boxes of the name of the company. You know, automating infrastructure, and that was the kind of infrastructure we needed at the time. So
Yeah, it's so simple and obvious now
yeah,
because that was the goal, right? Was to make
exactly,
it
yeah.
simple. And now we take
Just
it for granted, but
exactly,
yeah.
and it seems like God, this seems like so ridiculously
Yeah.
straightforward now, but at the
And
time
it's also
it was
informed, I
yeah
mean, well, potentially informed how Windows even, I mean, with subsystem Linux and right, like that, it's kind of represented the need for this
exactly
shared Unix
complete need,
environment. And now, yeah, exactly.
complete need, yeah.
Okay, so I am trying to install, I'm trying to access this via VS Code because I'm too lazy to use Vim. Um, let's see. Do I have the SSH extension? SSH. Remote SSH? No. It's even, to me, it's even funny to be like, SSH, that's so old. When's the last time I SSH?
I sometimes still need to do it with Docker.
Yeah, I do use it. I've just been using like Heroku and Node and JavaScript world where like there's just no DevOps.
I was actually
Now,
speaking to a friend the other day about that. It was like, do you use Kubernetes much? He's like, no, I don't need to.
yeah,
And you kind of forget that is still an option. He's still running things in a JVM, and it's like, yeah, that's still a lot of people do that, you know.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
here
not
we go.
everyone's on the bleeding edge of.
So I'm getting mine going in parallels. It's coming. It's coming. Just to play
I'm low
along,
enough
even though
on
by the time I
hookers.
get there, probably won't really need to bother anymore. But but I'm getting there. Yeah, it's a
Oh,
nice
I
trip
haven't
down
done this
memory lane.
before. So basically, Vagrant outputs an SSH config, which I can open in VS Code. I've never done that
Yep.
before. Usually, I've like
Yeah.
entered the credentials manually. So this is pretty
Yeah.
nice.
While still doing that, I'm going to look up the order of software releases so we know which one to look at next.
So we know what. No, I don't want this. I don't want
Got it.
that config.
Okay, got it.
Open C : users. Oh, connect to a host. Nope, that's not what I want.
Oh, you're trying to do it from Visual Studio Code. Yeah. Okay. I have experimented. God, I cannot talk today. I have experimented with that in the past, but I haven't had much of a need recently. Or I just forget to do it.
Okay, then what just happened here?
Have you SSH into the matrix again?
Yeah. Paste it.
I can, for a second, switch into, if you like, I can very quickly switch into what I've got going on here. Oops.
Oh, it wants me to copy this. Okay, I see.
Not what I wanted. Hang on. I tried to make my screen go full screen and I made the restream window go full screen. So yeah, I'm doing it with parallels here. It is working. It takes a little bit of time. You can actually see in the parallels interface that it's coming in here as well. But this is the interesting thing. Of course, with most of these tools, I could SSH into this Kubuntu box if I wanted to as well. But yeah, it's the automation aspect. I always wonder how many people use tools like Vagrant in production. I think it was more of a development tool. I'm not sure. Yeah. But.
Yeah. Well, is it a production tool?
No, I don't think so. That's what I'm saying. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously there are people who still use virtual machines in production as well, like much more highly optimized ones. They still exist, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Stack Overflow says it's mostly a development and staging server, and then you're basically replicating that on in production.
Yeah. Okay,
well, I have.
Here we go. Any
Wow,
second now.
I don't know if you can hear it. It's thundering and lightning pretty bad.
Oh, was that? I thought that was just you knocking the microphone.
No.
There we go. And I'm in my quite old Ubuntu box. So there we go. I've got that working as well.
Okay. I'm giving up on VS Code because I found a bad tutorial and I'm wasting.
That's all right. I think we're probably good on this aspect anyway. I think we don't want to spend too much time with Vagrant. We can probably move on to the next one if you like. Let's try and do 2. How about that?
Sure. All right.
I'll drop out the screen share for now.
So which one would you like to do next?
Well, I'm looking in historical. Oops. I'm looking in historical list, and according to Wikipedia, the next one was Packer. I'm not 100% sure if Packer still exists though, so let's have a quick look.
A tool for building virtual machine images.
Packer does still exist. Okay, Packer still exists. It's under infrastructure.
The only other one I've even heard of is Terraform.
Yeah, which we will probably get to either later or next time. But let's have a look. So Packer, I remember Packer. I think Packer was almost like I think Terraform is to Docker and Kubernetes what Packer is to Vagrant, basically. So we're kind of going down similar paths. So let's have a look. Actually, I'll share my screen back just to show you what I'm looking at here.
Their docs are nice.
They have quite a good team actually as well.
They're very clean. Things are really simple. Like it's very despite the way things have been going, it's still very developer friendly. It's like here's the binary.
For sure.
Here's the get started.
Yeah, that too their audience is really. I find this interesting. So we talk about Packer maybe being a little bit out of date, but there's a blog post here, and we should actually check the date on it, of course. From October 2021. So they are still working with it and they're commercializing it. So yeah, so there you go. They all still exist and all still around. I'm just gonna destroy this message in the background so it doesn't eat up lots of resources. So we should probably jump into install. So again, I've got a nice homebrew formula, but you'll probably find it in Chocolatey again. I'll switch back into multi-share mode whilst we do that.
Yeah, the install just gave me a zip file with an exe inside of it, which, as usual, is annoying to map path to. So let's try Chocolatey.
Will Chocolatey save you?
Yes. Save me from editing my path files.
It's done. So brew tap, HashiCorp tap.
Okay. Chocolatey Packer has been installed. Now we will get started. Getting started with Docker.
Interesting.
HashiCorp Packer automates the creation of any type of machine images, including Docker images. You'll build a Docker image on your local machine without using any paid cloud resources. Huh. Interesting. Provision infrastructure with Packer. First steps. Okay. It's interesting because their getting started guide has the first recommended thing is Docker.
Well, it seems
Then,
reasonable.
yeah, and then AWS, and then their own registry.
Yeah.
And then the first steps is actually the third heading under the tutorials.
Yeah, I think I'm looking at the same window as you. New to Packer, get started in a few minutes. Docker AWS HTTP
Yeah.
Packer with other tools. Vagrant, yeah. I mean,
And even their getting started guide leads to a Docker heading. Interesting.
I'm seeing.
I don't know if this is actually a Docker tutorial. Yeah, it
you
is.
on where did you end up?
Well, I clicked the heading that says getting started. Like they're new to Packer, get started in just a few minutes.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
It's like,
okay, that's the same
yeah.
as me, yeah.
But
So
I'm actually
manual
going to do
open.
the. Oh yeah, that's interesting. Huh.
Let's verify
So
installation.
Docker containers you have to use cloud resources to build them. Is that what happens?
No, not usually, no.
So why would I
But
use Packer?
So you might I think is the implication there. Yeah, you might. Like we hear this complaint from some of the engineers I work with. You know, how much carbon are we emitting by building all these Docker images? Which doesn't necessarily exclude your local machine, but often in production or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. We'll come to it in a second. But build an image. So I guess we're both looking at. Yeah, I can see we're almost looking at the identical windows. I'll switch to you for a second. You can.
Oh yeah, chocolatey on Windows was suggested. But what's interesting is in the docs, we get Ubuntu commands like touch and stuff. So even if you do install chocolatey, I guess it's not so hard. I'm just complaining about having to make a text file.
This is actually something I will point out so far I've seen. They have this custom HCL file format, which seems to be consistent, apart from the Vagrant file, which is different. Although I think the Vagrant file follows the same syntax, actually. All their tools, even the new ones, seem to use this same text format. So that's good, actually. Copy.
Okay, and yes, Docker Ubuntu. Add the following block and save it to the file. Okay, HCL. VS Code is very confused. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would have thought there would have been a file, like a prompt to say, do you want to install a plugin? But I haven't seen one. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
I did, but it's interesting. It's a Terraform plugin. It's not the Packer.
Yeah, but it's the same syntax. But yeah, it's probably not the same. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So, just walking through this. So the Packer block is Packer settings, so plugins, things like that. Source is then source for a plugin outside the HashiCorp domain. Then what you're going to use to build, which in this case is Ubuntu Xenial. I don't know if that's particularly current, but. And then what to do with the container. Okay, all right. It does use slightly different syntax. So with Vagrant, it's the whole Vagrant up thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Packer so far does init. And I have to sit and think if that makes sense. Initializing configuration
Packer
as opposed
is downloading,
to
right? It's not up is different because up is lifting your VM. And this is initializing.
Bringing it up. This is initializing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that?
Let me invalidate. Packer format period. Okay. Packer validate period. Build the image with the packer build command. Packer will outprint packer builds.
So yeah, there's a whole bunch of like pre-steps with it as well for checking over the file and things, which is pretty valid. You don't want to start spending a lot of time on files that aren't valid, I suppose.
Yeah, well, also the intention is to automate a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So is that the value here? Is this if I want to like automate the generation of Docker configs, like Docker pack, like
Yeah,
build?
yeah.
So
A lot
what would that
of
mean? Like
tools
if I
are.
have a new employee and I want to give them their own Docker build or something?
Yeah, so you give them a Packer file or something like that, basically.
Yeah, I see.
It's there was a lot of tools that came out at the time to do this. I mean, there's quite a few of them. Um, yeah, but it's interesting to see that it's still around. I do definitely recall using it in the early days of Docker. I don't know. I think once you get to Terraform, I think Terraform then kind of handles a lot of all the bits together for you. But we'll come to that probably next time. But I think that's kind of the selling point of Terraform is it goes even further above the stack, I think, in some respects. So that just gives us an image, yeah.
Another
Packer
meta
only
layer.
builds images. It does not attempt to manage them in any way.
Yeah.
After they're built, it's up to you to launch or destroy them as you see fit. So in theory, if I look on Docker desktop, I should see it in there somewhere. Yeah, I can see it. I'll show you. So I can now see on Docker desktop, here's this Ubuntu image that I built. And I could run it, I guess, if I wanted to. What I'm going to do with it exactly. But Vigorous Williams, there we go, running Docker image. And we could SSH into
Underneath this sort builds. Okay.
And there you go. I'm inside that that running container now. So yeah.
Yeah, that was a confusing command. The block defines a shell provisioner which sets an environment named foo in the shell execution environment and runs commands inline attribute. Your block should look something like this. Okay, that's useful. Provisioner shell. Build image.
Yeah, and I think this is where it becomes more powerful is these variables, basically. So dynamically generating the images.
Yeah.
And
So in that
what
use
Terraform
case
does
of
a
giving
lot
your
as well.
employee its own container, you could say
with an ID attached or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working at a big company just for a short time, I always wondered how they managed to do that. Those kinds of things,
Actually, it's quite interesting. A few years back, I contracted to a very large American software company. And I was quite surprised to see that they actually provisioned machines, like even Macs. They provisioned Macs with chef scripts. I basically opened the machine and it auto ran a chef script and then installed everything on my Mac. Like it wasn't even Linux or dev related. It installed Office and all this kind of stuff. It was quite fascinating.
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah.
Verify the image by running it with Docker. You need the image. I probably have Docker. Yeah. Docker.
Okay, I think we're both going through the
Docker run it.
Next tutorial now. So this is the provisioning, yeah? So yeah, this is adding things in to the image. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I basically run through this tutorial where it launches the Docker image. You SSH into the Docker image, and then you can output the value of the config file, which has written a variable into the environment, I believe. Let's see.
Yeah.
Echo foo is. Oh, it writes a it writes a variable. It writes a environment file to example.txt, which you then output.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's a lot of different ways to do this now. Yeah, I think again, much like with Vagrant, it was one of the first. So again, it seems like why would you need this now? I'm using X, Y, Z other options, but yeah, there's
Well, it's a history lesson. What year was this produced again? 2013. So this is almost 10 years old.
Yeah, which again is pretty amazing to think now. I've lost where'd the packet tutorial go? I've lost it. Oh, there it is. So you can run it. It would be, I don't know now.
Add the following variable block to your packer.hcl file. Docker.packer.hcl file.
Not even sure which. How do I know which image I want now? This one? Strange, why it doesn't have a name.
I don't actually know where this goes. I'm gonna guess it goes in the top, second most top level.
Yeah, there we go. Got it. So
in your Packer template, upload your source block to refer to Docker image.
Oops. Variables. Yeah.
Update the second provisioner to print the Docker image. Okay, this is cool. Provisioner shell. Echo running var Docker image.
I've just let you go on your own here.
You let me go on my own?
You kind of got ahead of me and it doesn't seem much point catching up now.
Build the image. Well, I kind of like this.
Yeah, no. There's nothing. It works very well. I just think there's a lot of other options for it now, especially if you're in more the Kubernetes space. But yeah, it's still perfectly usable, and it looks like it's still updated. And obviously, as we see, there's a commercial product just released, so they're definitely still working on it. So yeah, there's no reason not to use it. I guess is the statement I'm making.
Oh, I've put variable in the wrong place, and I don't know where it goes. Variables. I think variables are top level. No. Maybe they are.
Top level.
Yeah.
I was looking a second ago.
Could use the
Environment
verify
variables.
command.
Provision a shell. It's a provision a shell. That's what I see. I'm not sure if that's where you're at, or if I'm just plucking.
Yeah, no, you're just saying random things.
Oh, fair enough.
So, well, this is the, imagine you wanted to map a employee ID
Yeah.
to the.
Yeah.
So you're defining. This is actually using the Docker distribution as the variable, and so you're defining the variable within the script, and then it's basically able to use that within these other, shell provision.
Yep.
But the definition was confusing because I didn't understand that it was like a top level. It just says add this to your file, but it doesn't say where.
Oh, really?
So let's see, build image with variable file. I think I've create a file name. Okay, I built that image. The output is the same as before, but now the Docker image variable is being used to specify the Ubuntu. Yeah, so nothing happened. You'll know it worked when you see Import Docker image. The artifacts, I'm pretty sure it worked. I actually don't see that. Oh yeah, the artifacts of successful builds. Okay, so let's build the image with the variable. Since Docker image is parameterized, you can define the variable before building the image. There are multiple ways to assign variables. Yeah, this is kind of the other thing. I was thinking like, okay, well, if I wanted to use the employee ID, I wouldn't want to actually edit the build file. I'd want to do some other isolated thing.
Yep. Yeah.
So we need to make a example.pkrvars.hcl. I don't think we actually want to do that. And I'm going to install another version of Ubuntu on this machine. It looks like.
Inception.
Sorry, what'd you say?
Inception. I did actually once on a Windows virtual machine on my Mac install Docker so I could take a screenshot. So it got pretty deep.
Okay, so now we are launching another version. That was really quickly. Notice how the build step runs Ubuntu Bionic. Ubuntu Bionic. Okay, cool. Packer will automatically load any variable that matches the name .auto.pkvars without the need to pass the command. So rename your variable file so that it automatically loads it. Example, rename. Example.auto.pkvars. Then I can just run packer build period. Build the image, setting the variable directly from the command line. Okay, that's cool.
Okay, yeah. That's more useful. Yeah.
It's probably more. And I will get another distribution of.
How many right now?
I think at least 6 right now.
So I made sure I quit Parallels, add Docker, and VirtualBox because there was a bit too much going on.
Parallel builds.
Yeah, the parallel builds thing is really interesting actually because you can start to spit out the same image to multiple outputs at once, which is very good for a whole bunch of different purposes. But that is
I think
where
this
things...
is a good place to end it.
I think so too. And then the post-processing is another interesting one, but I think we've kind of gone far enough. I think it's good to see that it still works and it still is supported, and there is a commercial out of interest. What is the commercial one now? Where did we get to it? Go back. How far do I have to keep going back? Sometimes you wonder if I could have just clicked on something and it'd been quicker. HCP Packer. So it's the Packer is a registry. Yeah, it's a registry. So it's a registry other places. So yeah, it's a registry. I mean, there's a lot of other registries as well. So it's yeah. Okay. Fine. So I think we may have to. It's actually interesting because I get the feeling this is going to last us a fair bit of time because now when I look at what's next, I'll get. Oops. I'll pull up the Wikipedia page I've been looking at. So
Terraform,
Vagrant, Packer, those are kind of the first ones. And then we start to get a bit of a run around mid-2000s. Terraform, which is a big one and still used quite a lot. Console, which I think is used less than people used to use it. Again, I think it was one of the first of its kind, this kind of service discovery for distributed systems. It's used less, but it's still supported. Vault, again, is secrets management, not original now, but definitely at the time, and then a lot more. I think, I think I forget how many come later, and then we get into these ones. Like these ones here, I think are less known, to be honest with you. I think you would probably say most DevOps people have heard of pretty much all of those. Whether they've used them or not is a whole other question. But then when we get to the newer ones, I think they're less known. Nomad, Surf, Sentinel, Boundary, Waypoint, I think are less known. But I gather that Waypoint is becoming more popular, and that's where they're putting a lot of new effort into. Actually, I learned from the interview Mitchell Hashimoto is actually joining the Waypoint team as a lead developer as well. That's how into it he is. So,
Wow.
maybe in the intervening weeks, I will look at which of these are open source and which of them are commercial, and we can drop a few. Otherwise, we'll be doing this for months. but we'll definitely try to look at Terraform, Console, and Vault, I think, because they all come out around the same sort of time. But Terraform might be a big one, and that's still quite popular. But
Yeah, Terraform might be tough.
What are your thoughts, sort of so far at this point, from what you've seen? Obviously, we step back in time a little bit, and kind of looked at tools that have less use now, but still work. What are your thoughts on bearing in mind that aspect of the what they were doing and the experience they were kind of presenting is an experience that was of its time? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that I honestly had associated a lot of complexity with the Vagrant because the experience I had with it, the image was complicated.
Yep.
So I thought Vagrant was complicated because the only exposure I had to it was this like complex system. Now that I see how simple it is in a Hello World environment, it's like, oh, this is like really easy to do. It's just a config file, and like, it must have been whoever was running the DevOps at that office that was complicated, right? I think there was also a problem where so I remember onboarding this again. This was basically this must have been in 2013.
Yep.
And I was on Windows and they were on Mac,
Yep.
and they were like telling me to install. I remember using Vagrant, but I think I was also using Postgres and some other tools that were much harder to install on Windows at the time. And again, I was like, Vagrant was this mysterious piece I didn't understand, and I couldn't understand why these things weren't working together. But that goes into the OS level integration where you're saying like, yeah, this is local on your network and it's local on your system. But by the way, like that also increases, the ability to have like a disruption between the OS, right?
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting. It's like, at the time, he was like, why do I want anything that I can't just SSH into and do stuff and upload files and all this kind of thing? Because that was what you were used to at the time. And now that seems like something you would never do. So looking at Vagrant now seems totally fine because we're kind of used to that workflow. But at the time it was like, why are we adding all this stuff when I could just do this?
So then you edit the wrong environment variable or something, and you have to redo it, and you're like, oh, okay, well now.
And you break a test machine for everybody, kind of thing. And that, definitely. I think at the time there were still tools that only worked on Linux environments, or the fact that the Mac OS and Windows versions of Postgres or whatever were so different. That you couldn't rely on it running. So you kind of needed to do something different, and that's what we used to have. We used to have a lot of custom Drupal Vagrant images and stuff like that would just get you the whole stack going, and then mount your PHP files into a shared directory. Basically, that was it, and that was great.
I do like the culture aspect that you brought up about like how the founder is coding. I liked the design of the web pages and the marketing material, and like it's very different than a lot of modern developer focused companies where like I think a lot of modern developer focused companies are trying to advertise the values toward the business owner. And here they just said, screw it, this has worked for us for 10 years. Like,
if you go up a level, I think you get a bit more of the marketing. But I guess it's also the thing, it's a company. This could be a double-edged sword, of course, but it's a company that people already know. And that can be a double-edged sword because you have to keep up and you have to remain relevant. Just being known isn't always enough forever, It's
just also simple. I just like how, like, I guess my assumption would be, wow, this company has been around forever. This is going to look like, the SAP homepage or something. But really, they toned it down, like they're like, well, this is all you really need to know. We know this from experience. And like, here are like the very, very minimal things you need to know. Learn more and get started for every product, Like everything is just so well done on the design side. Like I'm a huge fan.
Good. Well, we'll dig further over the next couple of episodes and see if that continues. I would think and assume it gets better, but that's hard to say. Maybe there's also more stretch for time because there's more priorities and things like that. When you do have one or two projects, there's less to divide your attention as well. So who knows? We shall see. But in the meantime, Ian, how can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
You can follow me on Twitter. My username is Ian Jennings, and the E is a 3. What about you, Chris?
I'm on christianschiller.com and chrischinch on Twitter. And yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
2 weeks with more HashiCorp.
Yeah, I should be able to see the date, but I can't. But in 2 weeks with some more HashiCorp to dig in a bit further and see. So take it away, Ian.
This has been Developers, otherwise known as Devx5, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Bye.